Okay, let's talk about one of the biggest, most visible challenges facing India's cities: trash. I mean, it's a huge problem, right? It affects everything from your health to the environment. But here's what's really fascinating. For every city that seems to be drowning in garbage, there's another that's figured out how to turn the whole thing around. And that's the story we're getting into.
I mean, just look at this. This picture, it really says it all, doesn't it? For so many cities, this is the daily reality. Huge piles of waste just dumped, unscientifically, polluting the land, the water, right next to where people live. This isn't just an eyesore. It's a massive, massive risk to public health and the environment.
And it's not just some abstract environmental problem. We're talking about a serious health hazard. The World Bank puts it really bluntly. The people who are closest to this mess, the sanitation workers, the families living right there, they're the ones paying the highest price with their health. This is a full-blown public health crisis, and it's hitting the most vulnerable people the hardest.
Okay, to really wrap your head around the scale of this, check out this number: 1,100 metric tons. That's how much waste a city like Indore generates. And that's not per year or per month. That's every single day. Now just imagine multiplying that across all of India's cities. Suddenly you see why you need an incredibly efficient system to even begin to manage it.
So, before we jump into the solutions, we've got to really understand what makes this problem so tricky. It's not just about the sheer amount of trash, it's about what's in that trash.
And here's where it gets really complex. I mean, look at this list. You've got your everyday household stuff like food scraps and packaging, but then you've also got construction debris, hazardous industrial waste, and even infectious biomedical waste from hospitals. And the kicker? In a lot of places, all of this just gets thrown together into one big pile. It creates this dangerous cocktail that's almost impossible to dispose of safely. These dump sites literally become toxic time bombs.
Okay, so that's the problem. Now, let's talk about the solution. And the good news is, there's actually a well-established blueprint for how to do this right. Experts at places like the World Bank have laid it all out. It's not some big secret, it's a clear, logical process.
So the ideal system, it's like a chain. And the very first link, step 1, happens right in your home. Segregating your waste, separating wet from dry. From there, it gets picked up, transported efficiently, and then treated and processed. Only the tiny bit that's left over, the absolute final residue, goes to a proper, scientific landfill. See the difference? The whole mindset changes. Waste isn't just something you throw away, it becomes a resource you have to manage.
Now, the fancy term for this whole thing is sustainable and integrated solid waste management. But what does that really mean in plain English? Well, it just means you've got a system that's good for the environment, is fair and equitable for everybody, and, this is key, is financially viable. It can actually pay for itself. It's about looking at the whole picture, not just hauling trash from point A to point B.
And a really clever part of making it financially viable is this idea right here, the polluter pays principle. The logic is so simple but so powerful. Basically, if you produce the pollution, you help pay to clean it up. What this does is create a really strong financial incentive for everyone, from big businesses to individual households, to generate less waste in the first place. To reduce, reuse, and recycle.
And speaking of resources, a massive piece of the puzzle is organic waste. All your kitchen scraps. A huge chunk of the waste in India's cities is actually biodegradable. So instead of letting it rot in a landfill, you can compost it, just like you see here. And just like that, you've turned a major problem into a valuable product. Nutrient-rich compost for farms and gardens. It's a total win-win.
Okay, so the blueprint sounds great, right? But what happens when a city tries to follow it and things go completely off the rails? Because a plan on paper is one thing, but making it happen in the real world, that's a whole other story. Let's look at a cautionary tale.
And this is where it gets really interesting. We're going to look at two cities that use the exact same strategy, bringing in private companies to handle the waste. But the results? They could not have been more different. In one city, it was a total disaster. In the other, it became a shining example for the whole country. So, what was the difference? Let's dig in.
All right, first up, Gurgaon. Here, the system just completely collapsed. And it wasn't just that the trash wasn't getting picked up. The residents got so fed up that they took action, filing official complaints. They alleged that the whole thing was rotten from the inside out, pointing their fingers at systemic corruption and what they called prolonged non-performance by the private contractor. Basically, a company was getting paid, but the work just wasn't getting done.
And this chart, which comes right from their complaint, tells you everything you need to know. Look at that first bar. The city was paying for 63 sanitation workers. 63! Now look at the second bar. That's how many workers the residents actually saw on the streets. 8 to 10. Maybe. That's not just a small discrepancy, that is a massive, massive gap.
So what's the takeaway here? It's pretty clear. You can have a contract, you can have a plan, you can even have a private partner, but none of it means anything without proper execution and, this is the big one, strict oversight. Without someone watching to make sure the job gets done, the system in Gurgaon didn't just struggle, it completely collapsed, leaving the people who live there to deal with the consequences.
Okay, but now let's shift gears and look at Indore for a totally different story. This is a place where that same blueprint we talked about, with all the steps and community involvement, wasn't just followed, it was executed with incredible precision and success.
So where did Indore's success begin? Right at the very first link in the chain, in people's homes. They managed to get over 90% of households to segregate their waste. 90%. Think about that. People were actually separating their wet and dry waste before it even hit the curb. That simple act became the foundation for everything else they achieved.
And the results? Well, they went way beyond just having cleaner streets. The city saw a 60% drop in vector-borne diseases, things like malaria and dengue. This is just incredible proof that good waste management isn't just about making a city look nice. It is literally preventative healthcare on a massive, citywide scale.
So the big question is, how did they pull it off? Well, it wasn't a magic trick. It was a really smart, comprehensive strategy. They tackled the problem from every single angle. You had strong political will starting from the very top. They put GPS trackers on their collection trucks to ensure accountability. They ran massive public awareness campaigns. And they had strict monitoring and fines. It was a true team effort, involving everyone from the mayor's office right down to every single family.
So when you put these two stories side by side, what's the real difference? What separates a success story like Indore from a failure like Gurgaon? What are the big lessons here that any city, anywhere, can learn from? Well, it really boils down to a few key things.
At the end of the day, success in this isn't about finding one single magic bullet. It's not just about technology or privatization or a new policy. It's about making all the different pieces of the puzzle fit together perfectly. You absolutely need the political will, you need the public to buy in, you need smart technology, and you need strict enforcement. All of it has to work together, in sync.
So, the blueprint is there. It's not a secret. We've seen with our own eyes that it can completely transform a city, making it cleaner, healthier, and more livable. Which brings us to one final, really important question. If the model for success exists and we know exactly how it works, why isn't every city an Indore?